Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Upkick MMA episode 307. I am Brennan. Jake Paul taking on Nate Diaz in boxing. Okay, we're going to cover this fight round by round, break it all down, and talk about what happened here. A lot to talk about, not just because they fought, but, the typical Nate Diaz stuff. We'll get into that here in a second. If you like this kind of stuff, you like fight breakdowns, if you like MMA especially, subscribe to the channel so you know the next videos coming out. I break down fights round by round, do 2 or 3 videos every single week breaking down the UFC and other promotions. All right, let's talk about the fight. Okay, so, man. Let me know, what did you guys think? Did you guys think Paul has improved since we saw him last? I think he's tightened some things up. I think his cardio definitely looked better in this one. But I think part of it was just, I don't know why Diaz just didn't turn it up. And also, I didn't realize it until probably, I don't know, the 3rd or 4th round. I was like, oh crap, Diaz used to fight at 155. Like, he's the smaller guy. I mean, he looks tall and stuff, but he's definitely he has, less mass on him than Paul does. Now, it doesn't mean that he couldn't do anything positive or he didn't have anything positive here. It's just the things that he was landing didn't seem to have the same pop over the same amount of time. So let's get into the round by round breakdown. Jake landed a really nice right hand to the body early. Diaz was reaching with the jab. Jake was swinging hard, trying to get to end the fight early. Paul was unloading a couple slapping shots to end the round for Diaz, but this first round was a 10-9 for Jake Paul for sure. I think this is actually the highlights from the first round. He started swinging away like crazy. And he had him up against the ropes, and then he comes in there again. He just starts unloading, and Diaz just doing the typical Diaz thing, staying in there, trying to weather the storm. But I just didn't feel like his guard was, like, I don't know. It doesn't feel as educated in boxing as it does in MMA. I don't know. A lot of this was disappointing. I don't know. So I wasn't rooting for either guy anymore. I was actually just kind of interested in seeing how this one would go. I'm past the whole wanting to see Jake Paul get knocked out thing. I really don't care about that anymore. I'm more interested in how he fares against different styles and different people from boxing, old MMA fighters, people who are primarily wrestlers, people with a big overhand right, and now someone who's got some really good cardio. So it was interesting just to see that. Nate was shelling up and walking forward. Right hand from Jake landed here in the second round. Nate was on the inside, landing some small hooks. A lot of those pitter-patter things that he likes to do. He just wasn't following up with a lot of the big stuff that he often does. Nate ended the round with some hooks. I gave him the second round. I didn't feel like Jake did enough in this round to separate himself, so I gave it to him. 19-19. If you gave this to Jake Paul, totally understand. It's easy. This was a close round. Round 3, Diaz was staying huddled up and moving in with Jake landing a couple uppercuts. So as the fight started to wear on, every time Diaz would shell up and go like that, Paul started landing the uppercuts, which is something I've been, I was calling for a long time ago against Paul, because Paul tends to duck his head. And Diaz, did land some uppercuts as the fight went forward as well. But in this third round, Jake started going to the body. Diaz was landing some decent shots of his own as the round went on, but another round for Jake. Lots of uppercuts in that big, there's a big left hand that he landed. So I had him up 29-28 going into the fourth round. Fourth round, Diaz was pressuring and taking the uppercuts again. Diaz with a decent uppercut himself, staying in on the pressure, throwing some more hooks to the body, big left hands from Diaz. Jake tying up, ref separating them, giving Jake a break for a second. I wasn't a fan of that. Oh, here's what I'm talking about as far as the uppercuts go. So every time he would shell up like this, Paul would land one of those nice uppercuts. And Jake retreating and Diaz landing a ton of damage in this fourth round. So I gave I gave this fourth round to Diaz, making it 38-38. He didn't have Paul hurt at any point, but there was a moment where the referee separated him. And as the fight started to wear on, especially in the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th round for sure, the referee got real silly. He would separate them all the way across and take his time, like upwards of 5-6 seconds, which is an eternity in a 3-minute round. And then sometimes not separate them at all when Paul, like, we'll talk about it when we get to the last round. I'm not upset. I'm saying like, oh, they robbed Diaz. Diaz should have won this. They stole it from him. No, Diaz just waited too much. Round 5, Jake landing a nice jab, a right hand to the body, left hook puts Diaz down. This was the round where he dropped Nate, and this was a 10-8 for him. Making it 48-46. It made not an insurmountable lead, but it made it harder for Diaz to come back for sure. He lands this left hook here and puts him down. Let's see if I can get that one again. But yeah, the referee steps right in front when he does it, of course. But anyway, great round for Jake here. It was a little bit off balance. They said he hit him on the temple. He kind of did. It was, up here. The temple's right here. This is the temple. He hit him up here. He was off balance. It was a good shot. Plus he was off balance and he landed weird. When he didn't catch himself very well, he didn't stick his arms out. So because Diaz tried to gather himself with just his legs, so it didn't count as a knockdown instead of sticking his arms out. But that ended up costing him because it made it look a lot worse. Round 6. So I had him up, like I said, 48-46 for Paul. Round 6, right hand goes through the guard for Paul. Diaz landed some decent shots to the body in clinch range. Not a ton of damage either way in this round, but Jake Paul landed the bigger shots. He just did. His jab started working as the fight went on as well. He started really using that. So 58-55 going into the 7th round. Jake started using that jab, landing the right hand through the guard. Diaz was landing a bunch, but he just keeps taking the left hook. This round was not a great round for him, but you could give it to Diaz. I just didn't. I gave this round to Paul as well. 68-64. Meaning he needs a 10-8 round in one of these to get a win. Like there was, it got to the point where you knew that Diaz needed to get a finish in order to even think about winning this. It was one of those things where Nate Diaz had to come back. It was like, are we going to have the Leon Edwards thing where he lands one good punch, points at him, and laughs? We didn't get the big punch, but we did get the laughing and pointing. It's 68-64 going into the 8th round. Round 8, Nate turning it up again. Nate was just standing there taking a bunch of shots, and then Jake ties up. Jake started really tying up in these last 3 rounds. Big round for Nate as he landing a ton of uppercuts in close. Nate ends the round landing some really hard shots. I had this round for Nate. I had it 77-74 going into the 9th round. I felt like he did more in this one. Again, if you want to debate those things, I could understand it, but I felt like that was a really good round for him. That's probably one of his best rounds. Round 9, Diaz back to his old stuff, not throwing a ton out there. Nate was pointing at him and laughing. Jake backs up. Nate turned it up, but I don't think it was enough. Again, I had this one for Paul, 87-83 going in the 10th round. This is where he started pointing at him, doing the normal Nate Diaz stuff. I was hoping he would do that earlier. I was hoping that he would be pointing and laughing at him and doing that stuff and kind of enticing him into close range instead of the clinch. And this is what I was talking about before. Let's go over the 10th round. Paul was landing the jab and circling, staying on the outside. Paul holding him for 10 seconds over the ropes. That was the bullshit I was talking about. So they end up getting he ties him up, gets him in the clinch, and then holds on to the ropes, holding Diaz against the ropes. Again, this wasn't going to change the outcome of the fight necessarily, but you can't. The referee has been separating them nonstop and pushing them away from each other, and now he's not going to do it. He's just going to let them sit on the ropes. Anyway, and then Nate pulls the guillotine. It's fucking hilarious. And got because Jake ducked in and stuck his head in the the armpit. So Diaz was like, "Well, fuck it. You're gonna go there. I'm gonna get the guillotine." So it was still Nate's round, or sorry, still Jake's round. 97-92 is how I scored it. So two of the judges had it. I had it 98-91, and then three judges had it 97. Or sorry, one of the three judges had it 97-92 in favor of Jake Paul. So not those aren't bad scorecards. It's about right. Like I said, there was one round in there where you could give it to Jake or Diaz. That's fine. So this wasn't a blowout. It just was, a slow Diaz performance, which is normal. We've seen it before. We've seen it happen. When he fought Benson Henderson. We've seen this kind of stuff. I think, is it Rafael dos Anjos that he fought? I know when he fought Benson Henderson, it was the same thing. I think Rafael dos Anjos was the one who kicked his legs out. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, we've seen this kind of thing. He stands there, he's too tough for his own good, and he uses his toughness to intimidate the other guy and kind of force him into a brawl or force him into a bad situation, slow down the fight to his pace and make the other guy work hard. None of that stuff happened. Paul just stayed disciplined and kept jabbing and staying on the outside, and then it got more comical as the fight went on because you could see that Paul knew he was up, so he was jabbing and staying safe and, skirting the outside. When they're interviewing him, they talk like there's a possibility of them going to fight in MMA. Let me know, what did you guys think of the boxing match? Were you entertained by it? Did you think it was a good boxing match? Did you think it was boring for the boxing purists out there? Do you hate this shit still? Let me know what you guys thought. They're interviewing them afterwards. They would like to do it an MMA fight. They'd like to do it in the PFL. Jake Paul says $10 million. Let's go fight in the PFL. We'll go fight. He'll fight Nate Diaz there. I think that's interesting. I still think the size differential is pretty big. So we'll see what happens. I think obviously Nate has Jake was a good wrestler and he knows how to wrestle and he's been working on his boxing. So, it puts a little bit of kicks in there and works. I don't know how much grappling he's been doing, submission grappling or anything like that. So we'll see, but there's no way he's going to catch up to Diaz's ability in a matter of a couple months. So it's going to be mostly defensive and trying to stay on the feet. And then Diaz being able to keep the pressure on in MMA, land some shots to the body, especially with those smaller gloves. And then if it does go to the ground, wear on him, throw up submissions, that kind of thing. I could see it being more competitive, even though this wasn't, it was one-sided in that Jake won most of the rounds, but it wasn't like a total beatdown. Like the Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence fight was more one-sided than this was. It's also a much better display of pure boxing. So, and then at one point the cameramen were tussling. One of the cameras started like pointed off in a random direction, and then they point over there, and then like apparently they were fighting, and cameraman, then Nate tells him like, hey, come on, be nice. It was fun to hear Nate Diaz like telling people, hey man, be nice. Like it was funny. That made me laugh. Let me know what you guys thought. I'm down for the clown show now. I've seen Paul improve over the past 3 years, getting really good at this. Not just the promotion side, but also in the ring itself. And he's done a lot of work to make himself. He's still cringy, right? When he gets on the mic, and he's still got a few brain cells missing when it comes to that stuff. And he comes across as kind of like scam artisty, but his boxing ability has gotten a lot better. He's still not a clean, obviously professional boxer that's been doing it his whole life, but for fights like this, taking on other MMA fighters, I'm down for it forever now. So, who's next? All right, that's it. Well, that's the whole fight. There were some other fights on the card here. Serrano versus Hardy, and then Jeremy Stevens versus Avila. The Serrano Hardy one, I could break it down. Serrano just beat the shit out of her for 10 rounds. And then the Stevens versus Avila one, that was bad. Like, really bad. The boxing was bad. It was not good to watch. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, that way you know when the next video is coming out. If you're looking for breakdowns from other stuff from this weekend, I've got the PFL up. I've got one championship. And then the UFC card should be up pretty soon. So that'll be up today for sure. All right. Thank y'all for watching. Love y'all. Have an amazing week.